You think you can fix that Humvee? A sergeant spoke loudly, pointing at the female mechanic with her hair tied up under the vehicle. I'm being real here. Military transmissions are way different from civilian cars. Jenny didn't react. She just tightened a bolt. 10 minutes later, a black SUV rolled into the lot. A 3-star general stepped out, raised his hand in salute. Hello, Sergeant Clarke. Long time no see. Jenny Clarke, 32 years old, living in the small town of Iron Creek, Montana. She ran a small auto repair shop called Redline Garage. Small frame, brown hair tied back neatly, sun-weathered face, hands covered in grease and oil. The locals saw her as a skilled but eccentric mechanic because she always worked alone. From under the hood to programming computers, she never talked about her past, never mentioned military service. Jenny had a reputation for being quiet and efficient. She could diagnose engine problems that stumped other mechanics in minutes, could rebuild transmissions that others declared hopeless. But the local community didn't know her story. To them, she was just a small-town mechanic who kept their pickup trucks running one day. A military convoy stopped by the shop because their Humvee had electrical system failures. A soldier looked at her with a dismissive smile. Hope you know. Humvees don't come with manuals like civilian vehicles. Another sergeant tossed her a toolbox. If you can remove the circuit board, call me. Don't break anything. Jenny quietly pulled out a laptop covered with old military stickers, connecting it to the OBD2 port. Nobody noticed it was military-grade encryption equipment. Only special technical officers were authorized to use. The soldiers stood around, making casual conversation and assuming the small-town mechanic was way over her head. These things are completely different from what she's used to working on. Should probably call base for a real tech. We're gonna be here all day, waiting for her to figure out she can't fix it. Jenny ignored the commentary. Her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced precision, she accessed diagnostic systems that civilian mechanics never even knew existed. The laptop screen showed complex military codes and system readouts that would have been incomprehensible to most people. But Jenny navigated them like she was checking her email within minutes. She had isolated the electrical fault. A corrupted firmware module in the engine control unit found the problem. She said quietly, "Your ECU firmware got corrupted, probably from that electromagnetic pulse training you guys did last week." The soldiers looked confused. How could she possibly know about their training exercises? "I can reflash the firmware, but it'll take about 15 minutes. The sergeant who had been most dismissive stepped closer. "How do you know about EMP training?" Jenny didn't answer, just kept working as she worked. None of them noticed the way she handled military equipment with complete familiarity, or how she instinctively knew which diagnostic protocols to run. They were about to learn that assumptions could be very dangerous things. CTA Act 1. Ever seen someone skilled get looked down upon? Type SOUNFAIR. If you believe talent has no limits, she fixed the Humvee's ECU circuit board in 15 minutes. The vehicle started perfectly. The military tech team remained skeptical. Probably just luck without proper certification. Don't get too cocky. A young soldier glanced at Jenny's laptop screen and read a line override by Staff Sergeant Clarke, clearance C5R7. The kid went pale. That code was only issued to Special Technical Operations personnel who had served in combat zones that evening. The soldier did some research and found an old newspaper article, Iron Viper of the Desert. The female mechanic who saved a convoy under fire with a black and white photo of Jenny. She had been a staff sergeant in charge of strategic maintenance for Alpha Mechanized Unit, Kirkuk region, Iraq, during a 2011 ambush. She had restored an armored vehicle's engine in the middle of artillery fire, saving the entire convoy. The article described her as the most skilled field mechanic in the theater of operations. It detailed how she had kept damaged vehicles running through impossible conditions. There were quotes from commanding officers. Staff Sergeant Clarke could fix anything with wheels. Under any circumstances, she saved more lives through mechanical expertise than most soldiers save with weapons. We called her Iron Viper because she could strike at mechanical problems with lethal precision. The young soldier found more records, commendations, awards, stories of extraordinary service under fire. Jenny had been decorated for valor after single-handedly keeping a convoy of damaged vehicles operational during a 72-hour retreat through hostile territory. She had jury-rigged communication systems when radios failed, had rewired electrical systems while under sniper. Fire had performed engine surgery that kept vehicles moving when stopping meant death. The military files painted a picture of someone who was far more than just a mechanic. She was a combat engineer who had saved dozens of lives through technical brilliance, but then the record stopped abruptly in 2012 medical discharge, no details the next morning. The young soldier couldn't keep quiet. He told his sergeant about the discovery. "That woman, she's a legend. She saved an entire mechanized unit in Iraq. Word spread through the military convoy." The soldiers who had been dismissive the day before now looked at Jenny with completely different eyes when they returned to pick up the Humvee. They watched her work with new respect. Her movements suddenly made sense, the way she instinctively knew where military vehicle components were located, how she understood complex systems without consulting manuals. "Ma'am," the sergeant, who had been most condescending, approached hesitantly. "We didn't know about your service record." Jenny looked up from the engine she was tuning. "You didn't need to know you needed your vehicle fixed, but ma'am, you were decorated for valor. You saved lives. I did my job," Jenny said simply. "Same as I'm doing now." The sergeant persisted. "Why didn't you tell us who you were?" Jenny wiped her hands on a rag, considering the question, because respect based on past achievements isn't real. Respect either. "My work speaks for itself, or it doesn't." She closed the hood of the Humvee. "Your vehicle is ready. Drive safe." But the story was far from over within hours. Word had reached higher levels of command. Someone who remembered Jenny's service very well was about to make an appearance. Someone who had never forgotten what SSG Clarke had done for his unit CTA. Act 2, ever misjudge someone because of appearances. Type, I was wrong. If you've ever misunderstood a person. 3 days later, an armored military SUV stopped directly in front of the shop. A 3-star general stepped out. All the soldiers immediately came to attention. He said nothing to them, just walked straight to Jenny, who was wiping her hands clean, and raised his hand in a crisp, formal salute. The entire shop fell silent. He spoke clearly and formally. "You were the one who kept X-ray formation running for 700 kilometers through the dead zone. I was the one who requested your extraction from the front lines. I have never forgotten." The general turned to the group of soldiers and continued, "If you want to learn survival engineering, learn from her." He pulled out official documentation and signed an order recommending Jenny as a military-level consultant for training units. The transformation in the room was immediate and profound. Every soldier present suddenly understood they had been in the presence of someone legendary. The general continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Staff Sergeant Clarke didn't just fix vehicles in Iraq. She saved my entire mechanized division when we were cut off from supply lines for 6 days. He gestured toward Jenny, who stood quietly, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "While under constant enemy fire, she performed mechanical miracles that kept us mobile when stopping would have meant death for 47 soldiers. The general's voice grew more intense. "She rewired electrical systems with improvised materials. She rebuilt transmissions using parts from destroyed vehicles. She kept us moving when every manual said the equipment was beyond repair." Jenny remained silent, but her posture had changed for the first time since the soldiers had arrived. She stood with the bearing of someone who had commanded respect under the most extreme circumstances. The reason X-ray formation survived that engagement was because SSG Clarke refused to accept that anything was truly broken. She found solutions where others saw only problems. The general paused, letting his words sink in. She received the Bronze Star for valor under fire, the Army Commendation Medal for technical excellence, and the Purple Heart for injuries sustained while repairing vehicles during active combat. The young soldiers who had been making jokes about her abilities now looked sick with embarrassment. "Ma'am," the general said, addressing Jenny directly, "the Army still needs people with your skills. We've never adequately replaced what we lost when you were medically discharged. Jenny finally spoke. General Morrison, I appreciate the recognition, but I'm exactly where I need to be. You're wasting your talents in a small-town garage. I'm using my talents to help people. Same mission, different uniform. The general smiled slightly. Always the soldier. Even in civilian clothes, he turned back to the assembled troops. This woman represents the finest traditions of military engineering, technical excellence under pressure, innovation, in impossible circumstances, and the humility to serve without seeking recognition. One of the soldiers who had been most dismissive stepped forward. Ma'am, we owe you a massive apology. We had no idea, Jenny interrupted. You don't owe me anything, but you owe yourselves better judgment. Never assume someone's capabilities based on their current situation. The general nodded approvingly, exactly the kind of wisdom that made her invaluable in combat. He handed Jenny an official document. This is a standing offer to return to service as a technical consultant. No pressure, but the option remains open. Jenny accepted the document respectfully. Thank you, General. But my war is over now. I just fix things that are broken and help people get where they need to go. The best kind of mission, the general acknowledged as he prepared to leave. He addressed the soldiers, one final time. Remember this moment. You just learned that heroism doesn't always wear a uniform. Sometimes it wears coveralls and works with its hands. The general saluted Jenny once more, climbed back into his SUV and drove away. The soldiers stood in stunned silence, finally understanding that they had been witnessing greatness all along. CTA Act 3, ever witnessed a moment when someone's honor was restored? Type 0. Someone if you've ever been quietly helped by another person after that event. Red Line Garage was busier than it had ever been. Young technicians from the base regularly came to learn. Nobody was laughing anymore. Jenny opened weekend technical classes, teaching how to read electronic schematics for armored vehicles. She remained humble, declined award ceremonies, avoided media attention. She just left one line written on the workshop wall. If you understand your vehicle, you can save lives. No title needed, just do it right. Word spread quickly through military and civilian communities. Jenny's reputation transformed overnight from quirky small-town mechanic to combat-proven technical expert. Young mechanics drove from neighboring states to learn from her military academies, sent cadets for practical training. But Jenny's approach never changed. She taught through demonstration, not lectures. She shared knowledge freely, but demanded excellence in return. Mechanical failure in civilian life means inconvenience. She would tell her students mechanical failure in combat means death. Always treat every repair like someone's life depends on it. Her classes became legendary for their intensity and practical focus. Students learn not just how to fix things, but how to improvise solutions with limited resources in the field. You won't have the perfect tool or the exact part. You'll have what's available, and your knowledge make it enough. The respect she commanded was absolute. Her students called her Professor Clarke. Despite her lack of formal teaching credentials, military personnel who visited the shop addressed her as Sergeant out of habit and respect. Jenny's influence extended beyond mechanics. She became an unofficial counselor for veterans who struggled with civilian transition. The mission doesn't end when you take off the uniform. She would tell them, it just changes. Find a way to serve where you are. Local businesses began referring their most challenging technical problems to Jenny. Her reputation for solving impossible mechanical puzzles grew beyond automotive work. She fixed industrial equipment, restored vintage military vehicles from museums, consulted on engineering projects that stumped teams of certified engineers, but she never charged premium prices or demanded special recognition. She remained the same person who had quietly served in Iraq, focused on the mission, not the glory on the wooden door of her shop. Someone hung a small sign, SSG, Jenny Clarke, still serving. Jenny never asked who put it there, but she left it hanging because in her heart she knew it was true. She was still serving, still solving problems, still saving people one repair at a time. The difference was that now people understood they were in the presence of someone truly exceptional. CTA. Act 4. Do you believe heroes don't need to wear uniforms? Type. I'll live better if you believe in the power of quiet service. Not everyone who works quietly is inferior. Not everyone who gets grease on their hands daily has never walked through gunfire. Jenny didn't brag, but when needed, she stood up with the honor she deserved. Because sometimes, just once, a formal salute from a general is enough to make the entire world go silent and look again. Heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear coveralls. Legends don't always carry weapons. Sometimes they carry wrenches. And the most dangerous assumption you can make is that quiet service means limited capability. The next time you see someone working with their hands, solving problems, without fanfare, making things work that others have given up on, pause. Ask yourself, what battles have they already fought? Because the person fixing your car today might have once fixed the vehicle that carried soldiers home alive. The mechanic under the hood might have hands that have performed miracles under fire. Respect doesn't require ribbons or medals. Sometimes respect just requires recognizing that excellence comes in many forms, and sometimes the most valuable service happens after the uniform comes off.